So before we get into your experience, in particular in the Marine Corps, who is John Warren? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about your background, how you ended up in the Marine Corps, things like that.
All right. I'll try to be brief. And I think most importantly, I come from a very nuclear family, married mother and father, which is critical. But the family originated from Alsace-Lorraine. So like mid 1800s, immigrated to this, the Castro colonies were Alsatians. So, Castroville, Quehee, Texas, D'Hanis, Texas. So was raised in a very farming, ranching, outdoor environment, and that's still who I am, and that's who my entire family is. In fact, you're raised, you take care of your family, you earn a living, and you take care of the land.
Yeah.
And also very, all veterans. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, class of 45 at A&M, letterman in football and in baseball, but left when he was 16 years old as a sophomore. He was 17. He started at A&M, leaving D'Hanis, taking the trains back and forth. It was ultimately made a second lieutenant, middle of A&M, was in Germany, and ultimately came home, finished his education, and graduated, much like many of the, that era of the 44, 45, 46-year grads. My father, he came from Bethesda, Maryland, so, call it the mid-Atlantic area. Again, all Catholics. He found his way into the Marine Corps. He was a second lieutenant, combat engineer. My father-in-law was a 2-star admiral, Naval Academy guy. This is Carrie's father, fighter pilot, ultimately, commanded the Constellation, the Midway, and he retired kind of in that tailhook Bill Clinton era. So the military is definitely, along with, farming, ranching, and the outdoors is part of, just who we are. Born and raised in San Antonio, obviously went to A&M along with you, 92 to the 90s. We class of 96, graduated in 97. Same, father was in construction, built swimming pools, and that's where I gravitated to. I thought I wanted to be an anesthesiologist because all the doctors I knew were rich and had cool guns and cool cars and stuff like that. Yeah. And I did enjoy biology and life sciences type stuff. But once inorganic, organic chemistry hit, while I was a sophomore in the Corps at A&M, I mean, it was a little much. So ultimately transferred to the construction department. Loved every second of it with Toby. But I knew I was going to be a Marine officer from the time I was a little boy. That's what I was going to do. So ultimately, those things fell into place. Graduated and just went through the full Marine Corps pipeline and all the different OCSs and TBS type stuff. Ended up in infantry, which was the goal, which is super competitive. It's nerve-wracking to even think about, just trying to earn your destiny. Ended up in California, loved it at Camp Pendleton, was with 1st Marines, Rifle Platoon Commander, a deployment, and then an 81 millimeter mortar platoon commander, and then a deployment which led us into September 11th in Afghanistan. Then back to Quantico, where I was an instructor at the basic school for a short period, and then moved across the street to what we used to call the man school, the infantry officer course, which is a badass job. Top 12 infantry captains, just pressing, we're pushing the envelope as hard as we can to create the coolest, best training to prepare the lieutenants. And your hours are super irregular. There is no, set time and place to be like 7 a.m. to 6 at night. I mean, you could not work all day because you're going to work all night, train lieutenants at, during some operation, which is all great guys. And it was, it's super rewarding and fulfilling to take a young, untrained lieutenant and in a short period of time, 10 or 11 weeks, get them ready to go take over and be the platoon commander. And at that period of time, they're going to combat. So about, I think I was 9 years in, tough decision to resign. And I knew I knew where I needed to be. It was kind of part of the long-term plan of let's go in the Marine Corps for a while, get experience, grow up, and then, make a career in construction and development, which I resigned on August 5th of 2005 at Quantico, and I literally took off the camis and put on the hard hat for Clark Construction, where we were doing the base housing at Quantico. So it's hard to leave the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But to to then know that my job was still taking care of Marines, building their homes, which were desperately needed. This is part of that whole.
Badass. That's badass.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was cool. It was cool. As hard as things were, that was the silver lining. So that was like a $250 million job. Didn't know a thing about construction, even though it was my degree. None of it was applicable. So just, they threw you into the deep end and gave you the swim test, and just figured it out, and then went up the road to Fort Belvoir and did the same thing. So I started out as an assistant superintendent. They really didn't know, is this guy going to survive or not, and figured it out. Finally became a project executive, went to Fort Belvoir. That was like a $350 million job. And this is now 5 or 6 years in, and just beating up and down I-95. We were 23 miles from the project to the house. Sometimes it would take 3 hours to get home. So it's just really hard.
Yeah.
Carrie, about that time, she was promoted to vice president back in California, same stomping ground where we lived when we were in the Marines. And she said, hey, I got offered a VP with this thing. And I said, babe, you go do that. Okay. I'll resign, and I will button up the house, get it sold, take care of the kids, and we'll meet you out there. So she went out and found the house, and I took it from there, basically. And I remember Jack was like in the 2nd grade, and I had to show him, right, we had to go meet his teacher that night. And I printed out a bunch of pictures at the office of just all the coolest things in California: wave surfing, the skiing in the snow, Disneyland. And literally we're driving to his school, and I hand the package of pictures. I said, what do you think about that, Jack? He's like, cool. Oh, wow, is that snow? And he's like, when can we go? And I said, well, tomorrow if you want to. And he said, yes, let's go. And I said, well, so we're not going to go meet your teacher either, okay? And he's like, no, that's okay. I want to go there. So I'm not embellishing at all. Packed up the house, and flew down to San Antonio, then out to California. It was, and they loved it. So a short story that's now much longer than I intended, but lived in California with Clark for like 8 years, lived at the beach. We were beach bums. We were totally cool. It's just sitting on the beach, watching waves, and that's it.
Nice.
But when it's right there, it's kind of just what you do. Our life was about the beach and surfing and fishing. Our house, all tile floors covered in sand. There's sand everywhere. You just get used to it. There's
Nice.
an outdoor shower. You come in, you rinse off. There's wetsuits everywhere. There's always where kids are at our house with surfboards and wetsuits. It was just, that's the lifestyle, and it's pretty cool. But at the same time, the love for Texas and my family and my friends here never left, never subsided. We're always trying to figure out how to get back. And it was one day Carrie said, we were here for Christmas, like we were every year, and Christmas had occurred. We'd shipped all the boxes down to San Antonio, so Santa, would show up at mom and dad's house here. And then New Year's, we'd pack everything back up that we just shipped here to then ship it all the way back to California. So it's New Year's Day, I'm in the garage. I'm starting to get everything together, which is a pain in the ass. And Carrie walks out in tears, and she says, I can't do this again. We've got to be here. And I said, are you serious? He said, I am. I said, let's do it.
Wow.
I can't leave my project. I was running the Long Beach Civic Center at the time, which is a $400 million job. Great team, great job. And I wasn't just going to up and roll on. That was a great opportunity. So I commuted for about 2 or 3 months, which I will tell you, to go home to your empty house without your dogs, without your kids, is the closest thing to divorce I've ever experienced. And it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, and I'm almost done. Out of the blue, I get a phone call from my president. And he says, hey, we won some bank job in San Antonio. I think it's about 150 million. I hear what's going on, that you're commuting and your wife's in San Antonio, but we'd like you to come back to San Antonio and build that project and take over the state for Clark. And it was one of those things where it's like, did I just hear what I think I heard? Hung up the phone. I called my best friend. I said, well, who's got a big $150 million bank in San Antonio? And he Googled it, and then he sent me a picture of the Frost Tower in San Antonio, which, it's a Clark Pelly design. It's this big twisting glass high-rise that towers over the entire San Antonio skyline. Not the tallest, but it's just unique. So it was a pinch me moment, Brian. Serendipitous is probably the best word, because at that point, you know, Clark handled everything, the move. I mean, it was all taken care of. Or I was facing all these challenges. How do we figure all this out and survive, you know, a marriage and kids and not mess this up? So that's really where we've been the last 4 or 5 years here. Lived with my mother for a while. I mean, it was just, it brought just it all back how things started in San Antonio. Ultimately, you know, we found a home and continue to chase work and try to grow this business unit.